Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Work More, Better podcast. If you're keeping score, this is episode 2. As always, sitting across from me is the lovely Troy, and I am your host, Scott. And before we get into it, let's get some business out of the way. The following is not a self-help guide or a step-by-step instruction manual. It is a thought catalog, a social API from a combined 30 years of experience and multiple levels of business and industry that have been distilled down to a collection of stories and dialogues to share with you, the listener, to analyze and integrate into your own professional career development journey, and also to have a little fun ripping on the social oddities of corporate culture. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. And Troy, what are we getting into today?
So, today we're going to be talking about the most fun thing that everyone likes to deal with at work. What do you think that is?
Do I get, is this 20 questions? Is a mineral, vegetable, or animal?
I will go with it's its own animal, and it does not have to do with the free snacks at the bar. Those are always the snack bar is always the most fun. But we're going to talk about challenges, I think is how I'm going to introduce it. There are sometimes challenges that one can have within the workplace. And those challenges sometimes come up with communication. We sometimes call it conflict.
Oh, so we're talking about some interpersonal drama here. All right. Now I'm on board. Yeah, let's get into this. I can't wait to get into that. But before we do, let's get caught up with what we've all been up to lately. I will kick it off here with, so as you may have noticed by the tide marks on my wall, my ceiling exploded again the other week for the second time. Just randomly noticed there was just water just pouring down, just pouring out of the ceiling again. So we had couple of days ago, the whole maintenance crew in here. Last time they like fully like cut it out and everything. This time the guy came in, and I'm not complaining because they were okay. Maybe I'm complaining a little bit, but the guy came in like after we had like cleaned up all the water, like took one look at it and like went up and like capped off the pipe and then went back in, jabbed a bunch of holes in the wet drywall, and then with our fan like set that thing up to vent. And he's like, we're like, so we got a plan of action here. We got a timeline on this. It's like, oh yeah, no, we'll come back and patch it up. So a week goes by, and we finally we call the office and get them out here, and it's like, hey, we still got like holes in our ceiling, and damage everywhere. Y'all gonna come back? It's like, oh yeah, we'll get the guy out there. So they come out. They don't actually replace the drywall. They just spackle over the holes that they poked with the screwdriver, because now the drywall is presumably semi-dry. So yeah, that was my excitement this week. So get ready for what I imagine will be the trequel in this 3-part series, which is The Revenge of the Black Mold. That is sure to come now. But hey, at least they painted over it this time, which last time they just spackled it back over and never bothered to paint over the patch job. So they at least finished finished up the first time. But
Well, I can say at least they did a great job of the painting. That I can.
I feel that's a little generous.
Right now I think we'll take what we can get. So
Are you looking at the right part of the ceiling?
No, the left part. It's damn, dude. Is first of all I'm gonna say. That sucks. You're getting rained on. Hopefully not with black water, because that's just nasty.
No, thankfully this wasn't a sewer line.
Oh, that's
the
good.
benefits of being on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I haven't had anything like that happen to me recently. My black mold story has always been the leaky washing machine in the laundry room, because it gets a little clogged because our pipes are old. So there's always that have to get it, snaked out. But you never know when it's ready to go until it just spills everywhere, and it's a little gross. But yeah, I have not, luckily, knock on every piece of wood that I'm not going to do, have the mic pick it up. But
thankfully for mold to really take hold, that requires moisture. And out here in California, we don't really have a lot of that. So I guess that's one saving grace. But yeah, so it's been fun. And fun tagline to that story, or follow up, I should say, is that the recording robot was actually sitting where you are now, just mere inches away from the indoor waterfall that spontaneously appeared in my window.
Oh my God.
So we lucked out here, folks.
Yeah, we would have been out of commission real quick. I mean, yeah, the highlight of my past week has been buying way too many Halloween decorations because, Halloween. Why not? That's my life. Lots of,
It sounds gripping, man. It's that high octane, like full throttle lifestyle you are just rocking right now.
Oh, yeah, man. And then you got to make sure that once they come in, I'm going to inspect everything. If they're going to need a little bit of extra makeup, a little bit of that extra, theatrical blood to make it a little realistic. Oh, yeah.
Wait, you said Halloween decorations. You're talking about makeup. Where did you order these from?
They're from Amazon, so they may need a little touch up. So my zombies may need to be a little zombified a little bit more.
I've never put stage makeup on a yard Frankenstein. That's a new one on me. But you do you, bud.
Oh yeah, man, it's Halloween, bro. I'm all in.
Are you going all out over there with like the inflatables, like the giant?
No, not this time. I don't think inflatables are going to be on there for this year. It's going to be a backyard like graveyard. So we've got all the cool zombie stuff and all that. So I'm very intrigued to get all of that done. And then maybe next year focus on the front yard. I think it'll be like little cutesy stuff for when the kids come trick-or-treating. But besides that, it's all out in the backyard.
Do like a whole Plants vs. Zombies theme.
Dude, I think you're onto something because we have a lot of plants and now we have zombies.
Yeah. As I said, depends on the budget. Anything is possible.
I think.
But
So...
heck. So on that note too, like I did some light Halloween decoration shopping myself, and instead of just going out and buying a $20 squirrel buffet from like Safeway or something, I went and got two of those plastic pumpkins from like Michael's, like it's a local craft chain or nationwide craft chain, I don't know. So and then we just me and my fiance just spent some time watching the Blown Away Christmas special and painting faces on the pumpkins that are sitting out front now. And that was kind of fun. But this isn't really an arts and crafts channel, so we'll roll it along here. So let's get into it. Workplace, it's not a workplace. Just this doesn't have to be in the workplace. This could be like at the 7-Eleven, like if you're just having a bad day. But let's dive into it. Confrontation.
So confrontation is a very interesting thing, whether it is in the workplace, whether it's in 7-Eleven, whether it's at home. I find that one of the biggest challenges, especially when someone is traveling into that workplace, professional office environment for the first time, when they don't understand the true hierarchy of politics, because there's always that thing or person that's getting on your nerves. And sometimes you can't tell if it's on purpose or not. And anyone who's listening to this has worked in retail or in food service, it's a whole different ballgame because at least there it's like right up in your face. Whereas with this type of conflict, you find yourself asking, is it me? Is it them? Is it the situation? And I think that that's one of the biggest things to recognize is how do you deal with it in a professional, appropriate manner? And then when do you escalate it? But what do you do first? And I'll just start by saying the first thing I look at is what have I done to make it better or worse? That's how I start.
Yeah, you got to do that. Am I the a-hole checklist?
Yes, because it's a.
And odds are, if you have to run through that checklist, good chance you're the a-hole in that situation.
Yeah, and self-awareness is a big deal. And the other thing that's a big deal is taking responsibility. And I can say oh my God, it's been definitely over 2 decades of doing this. When anyone, whether it's myself or someone I've worked with, anyone who's like stepped up and said, hey, I screwed up. Hey, maybe I shouldn't have done that. It goes a long way. So whether that's with a customer or maybe just a coworker, like me and you sitting across from each other, if I do something stupid and I say, oh, dude, that's totally my bad, and especially if you bring it up first, it's a great way to prevent a conflict from ever happening. before obviously it becomes a thing, because that's when you want to really deal with it. You want to nip it in the bud as quickly as possible by starting with who is in the mirror, what did you do, and then expand from there. So what are your 2 cents on that?
I think that's a good framework to start with. Not necessarily the only route there. I started off by saying, yeah, you got to go through that "Am I the a-hole" checklist. But generally, things are not always that straightforward, and some things are. It depends on who's involved, right? If it's an interpersonal thing between like you and a coworker, that's one thing. But if it's a conflict between you and say like somebody in leadership or something who is like uh, personally causing like detrimental effects to your workflow or your team or your environment or whatever thing, that's an area where you're going to want to like look at options to bring like actual like human resources in for remediation, because that can be more of a trickier area to navigate. But as far as like direct interpersonal conflict resolution goes, I'm actually a huge fan and practitioner of non-adversarial confrontation, which is basically just another way of saying, you know, never attribute malice to something which could equally be attributable to incompetence, or otherwise ignorance is another way of saying that. It's everybody knows Occam's razor, but this is actually another one that I can't remember right now, but I'll link it down in the description. But yeah, I'd been saying, my dad used to say that all the time. And I just now realized that that actually wasn't like an edgy teenager thing, but you know, like it was an actual thing. But it's true, right? So if you're going into a situation where you're, you know, like you're worked up, you're mauling hard about something, uh, take a minute, breathe, and then think about it. It's like, okay, what is the core issue here? What is the root cause that I perceive of it, and who is the immediate point of contact for resolution of this? Now, normally, of course, that's the person that you're having issues with. And a lot of the time, it is like you can take some time aside to like be like, hey, I wanted to schedule like a quick, you know, like 10 to like go over some stuff with you. I'm having some issues with X, and I just wanted to see if we could kind of talk through this, and maybe you could explain a little bit better, just because I'm having some difficulty like seeing my way through this issue. And that's just kind of a way of just kind of feeling around the edges of an issue for the most part without getting like really into it. And if, you know, like you can, at that point, like that is often a resolution point. A lot of the times it is just more of a communications thing where it might have been something that they thought that they were doing correctly that was causing the issues that they just weren't seeing. And when you actually take the time to sit down and like work through somebody with something, like actually take the time to work through a problem, a lot of the times I would say like not 90% of the time, but like 80-90% of the time, like you'll find a resolution point there. Now, if you get to that point and you don't have an immediate resolution point, and it's starting to look like a situation where like they might be willingly doing something, then at that point, that's when you kind of bring in a third party. A third party can be anything from like somebody else on your team, or another coworker, or dragging them out into the street in the middle of a meeting, which is actually my favorite tactic.
It it's definitely a thing, and there's so many things to unpack with what you just said, because there's multiple levels, right? You just hit so many levels.
Yeah, we cannot dive like we're in the shallow end of this pool, full disclosure, and I am fairly certain like we'll get some feedback on this and do a follow-up episode. But yeah, we by no means are covering like the A to Z's of like the HR's handbook for conflict resolution here. Just our own experiences with it.
Yeah, and I would like to hope that it is still the case that most of the time that I've seen conflict, you know, I spent 10 years in retail as a manager, and I've spent the last 13, going on 14 years, so 23 years within a field that's related to construction. So not just dealing with your internal partners, but then your other vendor partners, and then the clients, and all these expectations. And the biggest key, and the thing that I've learned going all the way up in the corporate ladder and just being in the front is it's like what you just said. It's communication. There's more than likely the one thing that's going to bother a lot of people that are listening right now is there's going to be the way someone says something, the way someone does something, or that little condescending thing that really isn't that big of a deal. And like what you said, when you just say, hey, let me understand this. Maybe there's a way that they're communicating or you're communicating, they don't click, and that little 10, 15-minute like little huddle, you fix it. You know, I feel that is the majority of things, but because no one addresses it, it goes way overboard. Now, there are some more advanced, crazy things that I may talk about now or may not. I don't know. But, like, for the reality is, most people listening, it's just about communicating and also checking yourself, too. Like, if you're pissed off by what someone did, maybe just have that same little talk, like, hey, this is how I communicate. How do you communicate? And you find that ground. That's all you need to do, really. And it solves, like you said, like 70, 80% of things, just that little talk.
Yeah, a lot of the time too, it's just it's so easy. I'm just going to generalize here and say for humans to get into that negative mind space where like, and I'm probably guilty of this myself, like at least 2 or 3 times a week, where you just start like building up steam, and it's that kind of initial period where you make mistakes basically in terms of like direct confrontation, which is what generally you want to avoid. It's about like identifying when you're getting into that space and being like, whoa, take a minute, take a breath. I'm not forced to be in this environment. I am here because either A, I am collecting a paycheck at the end of the day. That's all you need to look at it as, you know, like these people sign my checks. I come on, I come off, even if you're salaried, you know, like you got that time, just look at it from, you know, like a macro perspective and step away. And then on the other side of that is, yeah, like you really like your position, like you're there, you're engaged, and we're very easily triggered is basically what I'm getting at here. So take that time to kind of step away and defuse yourself a little bit, and then kind of objectively look at the situation that you're trying to resolve. And then and this is a point where a lot of people screw up and try and think of like making self-determinations on whether or not it is intentional or not, because you just don't know that. A lot of the times, like I said, is like people are a-holes without realizing they're a-holes, and you can't necessarily change that, but odds are you'll be able to resolve at least the current issue you're having. And then you have that dialogue with this person in place to like open the door to future interactions with them when things come up. Or on the flip side of that, if they are knowingly an a-hole and they continue to be an a-hole, then you can take things to the next level and properly engage with like human resources or management to find a more direct remediation point for the issue if it is an ongoing thing.
And the one thing I'm going to jump in there and say, and just as a reminder for everyone's own personal and mental well-being, HR works for the company. So I say that because I have a lot of experience with this, and if the person that is the issue is very high up, especially if they're in the C-suite, your help is not HR. It's going to actually have to be your own personal attorney. No, that's not for this.
Because, Troy basically hit the nail on the head there, is that HR is basically there to look after the best interests of the company and make sure that protocol is being followed so they are not liable. That is the primary function of HR. Moving back to like the individual kind of interpersonal conflict resolution realm, let's just say it's like, oh, Jerry totally effed me because he didn't send the TPS reports in on time. Well, it's easy to think that Jerry is just a lazy a-hole, but, you know, did you actually ask what was happening with Jerry? And like I said, like anyone can make up a million excuses, but like maybe like he had to go pick up his kids from school because a pipe burst in his house and now his wife is finding a hotel and they needed to like get that resolved. I don't know. That's just an example. But if it's a thing where there's a difference between like a one-off example and if this is like a repeated habitual behavior, like what I like to call serial a-holes, then that's something where like you need to kind of address it directly. And then eventually, like if you can't find remediation to it, then at that point, like honestly, this is gonna be a little heavy. But first off, you're just gonna have to deal. To be honest, you're just gonna have to deal until you can either find a new team or find a new job if it's really that bad. Because I can tell you this from experience, and I'm sure you've got the same. No team is perfect. Like there is always the wild card, there is always the a-hole, there's always going to be something about your work group or your team or your org or somebody that is just continually being a troublemaker basically, or a pain in the ass. And that you just kind of got to accept. There's 7 billion people out there. The odds are of you just scoring that sweet, like perfectly cherried like work group is like 1 in 7 billion, to be honest. So just kind of be in that headspace when you walk into these sort of things and use that to kind of like guide as your kind of North Star where like you're navigating. It's like, how mad about this am I really? And do I need to continually be mad about this? And to that point, if it's something where you can just solve yourself by just making the change that basically removes them from the equation without adding a lot of extra work to your workload, that is also a viable avenue.
So I've got another one. So there's a lot of folks now we've talked about, I won't say self-reliance, but self-reflection, understanding like, hey, a-hole check, go and communicate, talk. Now, what about the folks that are transitioning into the office place, but they're currently in, somewhat of a maybe middle manager?
So you mean like you're going from the warehouse where you can just resolve things by throwing hands out front of Denny's to, well, Bill, I'd like to have a conversation about this just so we can foster an open dialogue and perhaps come to a remediation point together.
Yeah. So what would you say to those folks? 'Cause I can start by saying it's kind of almost exactly the same as what you do for yourself. You're just kind of having to.
You got to learn to
right in the middle.
Yeah, you got to learn to fight with words instead of hands in that situation. And it's like I gave a quick kind of off the cuff example there just then, but that is a kind of a serious kind of example of how an interaction like that would go. So like, just as an example here, I was like, Troy, I've been noticing lately that your on mic performance has been a little bit off because you keep looking at the camera and not talking directly into the mic. And I was wanting to see if we could set some time aside to kind of go over that and maybe work through this together and see like maybe if there's something on my side that I'm not really up to speed on or I'm not doing correctly, just so we can align on this particular issue. So that's an example right there of essentially like declaring that is like you're throwing the gauntlet down essentially when you start with that. And some people like I can relate is some people are non-confrontational and that's fine. And that's kind of where I try and push this non-adversarial confrontation, which is to say like put yourself in the mind space of, oh, this person isn't doing this deliberately, or I'm not going to assume they're doing it deliberately right off the bat. And I actually want to affect some meaningful change here. So like I want to open that bridge of communication.
Yeah, and the other thing that's great about that, so for everyone who is listening, we did have this conversation ahead of time. And that's another thing too. It's like, hey, as long as there's some expectations, communication, like, hey, why not? Then it's like, hey, I noticed this, why not? And yes, I will be 100% guilty. I'm so weird with being on camera. It's like, so I get it.
Hey, buddy, my eyes are up here.
Hey. But it's a really good, honest, open, also non-confrontational way to take it. And that's going to be what your life is going to be like as you move up in things. You don't have to be confrontational. No one ever has to be an a-hole. I mean, like Scott said earlier, you get a paycheck. This is not, essentially, this is not really real life. This is what you do for a job.
the worst thing that could happen is you quit or get fired. And in that situation, it's like a lot of people get hung up on this. And of course, yes, there are situations where, it's more dire of having that paycheck, but it's like you leave that job, just go and work at a car wash for a couple of weeks while you drop in resumes, get a new job. And I know it's not that simple, but I've literally been in situations like that where I've just been like, I need to quit this job. And I did. And the next day I went over and I just went to another business that was hiring. And I'm like, hey, I can do all this stuff. Would you guys want to hire me? And they're like, oh, we can probably make you a position. And I'm like, all right, cool. And that was when I quit Mervin's, by the way. That one I will name drop. Part of that, too, is also being able to accept responsibility, which we touched on very briefly early in the episode.
For me, it always starts with me. Everything starts with me. And I tell my clients the same thing. I don't care who screws up. It could be one of my subs. At the end of the day, they only speak to me. It is the one throat to choke. That is me. So every single thing that could ever happen, it is always going to be my responsibility. So it's always going to be me saying, I could have done this better, or thinking I could have done this better. And that means that, if you are my client, Mr. Scott, everything that happens behind me, I'm the one filter. If I screw up my communication with someone back there, that's my fault. And I have to make sure that I accept that, because now not only am I responsible for whatever's going on in the back that my miscommunication did, I now have to explain this to you. And everything in the back doesn't matter, because you will never see it. You only see me. And so being able to be responsible and say, hey, I screwed up, not only does it mean like you accept the responsibility, but it also shows the person you're telling that you're going to fix it. Because I have said many times in my career, yes, I screwed up and here's how I'm fixing it. And it gives you a lot of respect. It helps people respect you because you're not lying. That's the worst thing that you can ever do, is just lie right to someone's face. Because if you drop the ball, it's kind of simple to tell that you dropped the ball and you're paddling around it, just like, oh, here's my kayak. Let's just go around the issue. Or you just dive into the whirlpool. And I found that doing that and doing it enough times over the years, you get so used to not having to, backpedal, that you get better at just communicating, because you've already okay, I've screwed up this before. I don't ever want to do it again. And so when you take that responsibility, it just makes life so much easier. And the people you work with, they're going to love you, because you'll get ahead of it. Like, hey, I kind of already feel like I might do this wrong. Tell me how you need me to talk to you. Hey, what is it that you need from me? Hey, this is what I need from you. And I always put it in bullet point writing. I don't do paragraphs. I don't do any of that stuff that could be miscommunicated. No. Bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is it. Straight to the point. And everyone gets it. And it's just a better outcome. It makes my life easier. It makes me work less. It makes people stress less. And customers are happy. And even my internal customers, if it's like, hey, dude, you're screwing your coworker over. Stop doing this. Here's what you could do. Here's everyone on the same page. There you go. I've always had action items that are really like little one sentence simple, and that's it. Very easy.
Yeah. And so that's a good segue into kind of what I was leaning into as well here with this topic, is being on the receiving end, because you can be wrong. It's a thing that can happen. You can be wrong, and yeah, you kind of knocked it for the bleachers there. Ownership is extremely important in those situations. Part of my own professional reputation at work as being known as someone who can take a lot of body shots and keep moving. And that is because I completely own my own mistakes in that environment. And that's to say, when I'm walking into a situation where I know something's off or something did not go to plan, I try and effectively communicate that to the stakeholder or the POC or project manager or whoever I'm dealing with, and be like, hey, this is where this went wrong. Here's my remediation plan for the future, or here's a list of options of how we can try and mitigate this or correct it. So in that scenario, when you are the one who is kind of on the receiving end of that feedback or being put on the hot seat, it's human nature, like we're all the kids. It's like, hey, did you break that vase? Well, I don't know. I didn't see anyone, but maybe a bird hit it. We always revert back to that kid because like denial comes easy, but the opposite is true in business. And on some some faction, some group is not going to like you for it, or may even get agitated or mad about it. But more often than not, most people will respect you more for it and value your input more and come to you more when there are issues because you are known as an effective communicator because you do not shy away from that. And granted, if it's an issue like, hey, I just lost the company $20 million. At that point, just put all your stuff in the box. Like that, you can't walk away from that. But like as an example, so like we had a number of what we'll call priority distributions to A tier clients in my own team. I'm trying to use non-specifics here, but these people are kind of higher up on the list, and these priority requests came in on Tuesday, and they didn't get resolved until Friday to go out the following week. Now, people will be like, "Oh yeah, no, these just missed." But I'm like, no, I walked into that just like, yeah, no. I looked back and the records show that yeah, they submitted the orders on Tuesday and they're just not going to ship till Monday. Unfortunately, we don't really have a workaround for that right now, but I'm working up to see what happened there and how we can kind of cut down on that going forward. That's all it is. People generally aren't going to be happy in that situation. Some people might even get verbal in that situation, but a lot of the times are at the end of the day, it's like, again, the worst thing that can happen is, and I'm not, no, the worst that I think a lot of people feel that there is always like a sword over their neck, like for all the smallest mistakes. And it is true that repeated small mistakes can lead to termination. But in general, if you screw up once or twice and you know how you screwed up and you own it, you shouldn't be concerned about penalization essentially, or like getting fired. Like a lot of things, and if you're in a job where like you're in that situation where like you're constantly worried about being fired, quit. Like just like I said, just like quit and go work at like a Panda Express or something. It's a brain dead job essentially to just get you rent money until you find something better. But just don't be in that situation where you're wasting your time and mentally torturing yourself like that. Because again, a lot of the time, as long as you properly work through issues and you are a effective communicator and you take ownership of the situation, you shouldn't have anything to worry about in a professional environment.
I will 100% second everything that Scott just said. Your mental well-being is worth more than anything because that's what you take home to your family, your friends. If you have children, your children, they don't deserve all of that. So always put that first. And yeah, I mean, I remember it's funny you brought up Panda Express. I drove past one the other day, and they pay up to $30 an hour now, which is like over $60,000.
So that's misleading. So that is for like a general manager position, of which there are generally few, and so like odds are you won't be getting that. If you have previous industry experience, you'll probably be looking at something like a shift lead at best for entry, but that can transition into like a managerial position. But that's a whole different thing. But go on.
Oh man! So the managerial thing in the fast food realm, In-N-Out Burger, that is where it is at. I mean, they get paid very well. I mean,
they're kind of the exception, more the rule, though.
They're the one exception. That's like working for, I don't know what the equivalent would be. That's like working for a FANG company of fast food. Like you are good, and they're not just fast food.
They treat their employees like humans.
Yes, and their food is amazing. That's a total plug. I am not paid for that.
Lately, I'm all about Smash Burger, bro. I gotta be real. I gotta be real. It's as a hardcore like long like California lifer, like yeah, like I am all about the In-N-Out. You know, like the 3x3 animal style. Chef's kiss. However, I gotta say that after a while, like there's a very specific like flavor profile that starts to get a little one note with them. And then like we finally started getting like Smash Burger over here, and like everybody will talk Shake Shack. Oh, Shake Shack this, Shake Shack. No, Smash Burger. Like their patties are thin, they're well seasoned, they're crispy, and just that right amount of greasy. All about it now.
100%. I do that at home nowadays. Like if I'm going to be cooking on any of my like stuff, like even on my cast iron, I will do one at a time to smash burger it. It is absolutely amazing. Total plug. Google it. Don't care what you do. Have a smash burger somewhere in your life. Buy it from a store and make it at home. Yes. Yes. Yes, I look at the camera. I don't care. That's a good yes. 100% yes.
Yeah, no, it's I don't get like thick burgers. At that point, it's like it's too much ground beef in your mouth. It's almost like an unseasoned meatloaf. When you got like the thick like quarter pound, like no, smash those boys out flat so they're nice and crispy edges.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is what's really cool. Yes, we're going down this off ramp. Okay, so when like just like you said, right? Like you can only cook like a thicker burger so much, but you can stack. Stack.
That's the secret there. And also, you get more patties out of the same amount of meat.
And you definitely want to make sure you're using a highly fatty piece of meat because you want that.
Oh yeah, you got to go with that 80-20 chuck.
Oh yeah, and if you can find 70-30. Ooh, good Lord.
You're going to have to go to an actual butcher for 70-30. You ain't getting that away.
You're not, but it is worth every penny. And it's just a little bit of seasoning that goes so far because of that little char and that smash.
You don't need to be complicated with it. I don't get, like, this whole thing is, like, gourmet burgers. I don't get. And it's not just like, oh, wow, so sucks to be you, boomer. No, it's like... burgers to me lately have become kind of like an A-B category. There are bad burgers and there are good burgers. There is no in between. It is basically, so what I'm saying about that is like burgers have a finite expansion capacity in terms of like quality and flavor. You can like a Wagyu burger makes no sense to me. That's just put butter on your freaking burger. That's the only quality of Wagyu that is actually like permeable in the burger, is that it's just like a lot of extra fat, and like you can get that without spending a lot of money. But I was saying is like I've had like $20 Wagyu burgers that were not as good as the $9 burger from I want to give them a shout out, but I can't remember it now. But they're in Seattle. It's this I want to say it's like Sasquatch Burger or something like that. But they make an amazing smash burger up there, and that burger was like 90% better than the $20 Wagyu burger I got at this one place.
And that's, bringing it back to what we talked about. You want to like resolve conflict, take somebody out and get them a smash burger. Like, yo, let's squash the beef.
Well, that's a different approach to it too, and that really depends on your relationship with like this individual, or can even be a team. It's be like, but there are situations where we'd be like, hey, you want to grab a drink after work, and maybe we kind of walk through this right now. And there are times where, and you have to be careful here, but there are times where kind of like direct like confrontation can be useful, where you just basically like, take them out. Like grab a drink and be like, hey, okay, so I'm having these issues right now. Not necessarily specifically with you, but there are some things that you're doing that are contributing to this, and I just wanted to kind of call it out and just be like, hey, can we work through this right now, just to kind of align a little bit better on this particular issue. And then based on that reaction, we'll kind of determine where you're going from there. But yeah, like that can work, but that is something that is like kind of a black belt move right there. But yeah, getting someone a little schlitzed after work or during lunch to kind of move them into that move them into position is a valid tactic as well. But again, that's like a black belt freaking judo move right there, where you got to get them into the headlock via alcohol, and that doesn't always work, and especially on your Mormon coworkers, as I have awkwardly found out before.
Yeah. If they say they've never had a smash burger, you're in. You know what to do.
Unless they're vegan, in which case you're about to make a bad issue even worse.
Oh yeah. In that case, you're on your own. I'm sorry. I have a vegan friend, but it's easy with her. She likes fries, and well, actually, Smashburger has pretty decent fries.
Yeah,
They're
they
not
got like the
great, but
garlic
they're
Parmesan
good.
fries.
Oh, those are dope.
Yeah.
Those are really good. Okay,
I'm going to have
I
to
stand
bleep this
corrected.
out. We're giving them way too much press again.
I know, but damn, that was a worthwhile exit. I will tell you that much. Oh, that was totally worth it.
I think we're still at the gas station on the off ramp, but right now on that particular one. But yeah. There's to bring it back around. Yeah, there's multiple levels and layers to interpersonal conflict remediation or resolution, as the kids like to refer to it. And really, it's on a very case by case basis. But again, it all comes back to taking a minute to do that vibe check, do that a-hole checklist to see like if you are the antagonist in this situation, which is hard. Like I'm sitting here saying this and like I know like probably like again like most would be like, oh, I don't have that problem. And as someone who has that problem, I can say that yes, you are the one who might be the problem in this situation. And if you don't think you're the one who has the problem, you're probably the problem. And just dipping into my psych minor here, human beings don't change. Like, we make alterations, but by the time we're in our 20s, there are no full course corrections in our psyche. We are pretty much set. And a lot of people like to dance around that. It's like, oh no, people can change. Or if it's a sappy romantic movie, oh, I can make him change. Yeah, no, Beauty and the Beast ended much differently in the original French folklore. Look it up. And that's to say that, yeah, like if somebody is doing something and they are continually doing it, they're probably going to keep doing it unless they are motivated to change. It's usually that is the primary factor that motivates people to make an actual, like, effectual change to like a process or habit or crutch in their daily lives, because they will probably have been doing it for a while. And you'll be surprised because like there's so many people that are non-confrontational, and that is oftentimes like the opposite's what's needed, because like a lot of the times like people just need to be told they're doing something wrong. Like it sounds very generic, and it sounds like a kind of fortune cookie solution, but it is the truth. Like people is like, hey, don't whistle at women all the time. You would think people don't need to be told that in the modern workplace. Now, in Mad Men, sure. But we're talking like 2020s now. So, like, yeah, people need to be, like, called out on their shit sometimes. And people just are completely oblivious because that's just the behavior that we're used to, and nobody calls them out on it. And you know what? If it's a younger person, you're doing them a favor, to be honest.
And the one thing I'm going to add on to that is do not be a pushover, because I think that's the one weird part about confrontation.
Oh, yeah.
Is that I have a friend. I've had several friends where they're just like, they're so non-confrontational. They just get dumped on by this and this and this. Okay, just saying okay.
No. Wait a minute.
Yes,
Let me hold you up here, because like that is true. Don't be a pushover, but also make sure the chamber is loaded if you're going that route. And what I mean by that is save your receipts. Have the paperwork, have the numbers, have the information at hand to fire back. Because you don't want to be in a situation where, you know, like you go and you unload and you're firing blanks there, because then they can very easily turn the situation back on you. So in those situations in a professional environment, depending on the situation, you want to have hard, tangible data points to reference, especially if you're doing it with something like HR, or like you're calling someone out in a meeting over like something that they're doing or not doing. Like, just save your receipts and have the data on hand.
Yeah, and this will be my last part of the tangent. I swear, this really will be my last.
Oh, we're still on a tangent now?
Well, I think I just started one, but it's a good tangent. So
We're back to casual cashmere.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's coming out. It's coming. I'm just telling you, the needle just needs to drop like another like 10 degrees, and we're in casual cash territory.
I think that's going to be next episode. It's getting there. So one thing, to save receipts, anytime you're communicating with someone, and this actually helps prevent communication problems, follow up emails, always repeat what people say. And like if you're verbally doing stuff, repeat what they said back to you. And this actually happened to me like actually 2 days ago. I was talking to my girlfriend about something. And
You got to be careful there because this is venturing into like we're in the territory of direct confrontation. So this is like gloves off territory where like you're trading blows.
And it could be. But if you really, especially verbally, I think verbally this is one of the things I learned the best because I learn better reading than I do hearing. That's just my thing.
Yeah,
I just repeat stuff back to people.
I want to make sure that we're being clear here is that when you're at this point and you're going down this route, you are essentially burning those bridges. You are burning a bridge with that individual. Odds are good that if you have gotten to this point, that doesn't matter. But just make sure that when you're going the thermonuclear option here, that you are fully signed off on this particular like individual or group that you're going after, because this is like I said, it's like this is the gloves off option where like this is direct confrontation.
Yeah, because you're making your own receipts essentially, and it helps. It sounds weird, but it totally helps because if you really didn't understand it and you recap and someone's like, "Nope, that's not what I said," at least you can fix it.
Well, let's play the tape
quick.
back.
Yeah, and then you can fix it. Like, if you generally didn't understand, like, that's cool. You fix it before it became a problem. Because I have to do that because I can't, my hearing and my visual, I just learn differently. So it's a little awkward sometimes, but it is so helpful. Because I also tell people straight up, if I don't read it, I don't remember. So I do preface it that way. And I do find that personally helpful. So if you're someone like me, it's okay to tell people like I will repeat things to you because I unless I write it down or see it, harder time. Or you could have to hear it, and say it, whatever it is. Just, help yourself to help yourself.
Yeah, and that's definitely a valid point, is that, again, save your receipts. If you're going to go that route, make sure that you are effectively like communicating your point and you are pointing to solid examples is kind of the way I would tie that off there. So, class, what have we learned from all of this? Well, we learned not to be an a-hole. We learned that maybe we are the a-hole, and we learned to not let the little things bother us at the end of the day because, like everybody else, we're just here getting a paycheck. And in most situations, if it's getting that bad, you can just pull the ripcord. And we also learned that nothing is more important than numero uno, which is to say your own personal health and professional development. So, anything to add to that?
Nothing else to add to it. Just always remember, like you said, this is your paycheck. It's your job. You've got your family and friends. You got the people that love you. So, make life easy.
All right, kids. Well, that's going to do it for us here. Try and make the sandbox a better place for the rest of the kids because we're all in this together, and these little things, these little steps just make it all that much more bearable for the daily grind. So it's been fun. Until next time, stay safe out there.